Welcome to the Norris Group Real Estate Podcast, a show committed to bringing you insights from thought leaders shaping the real estate industry. In each episode, we'll dive into conversations with industry experts and local insiders, all aimed at helping you thrive in an ever-changing real estate market, continuing the legacy that Bruce Norris created, sharing valuable knowledge, and empowering you on your real estate journey. Whether you're a seasoned pro or a newcomer, this is your go-to source for insider tips, market trends, and success strategies. Here's your host, Craig Evans.
Hey everybody, it's Joey Romero, Senior Vice President of Operations for the Norris Group. We are super excited about tomorrow's event, Elevated. So we didn't get to record a radio show for this week, a podcast. So what we're going to do is this week we're going to share a really cool interview we've had with Coach Jack Fullerton. Bruce got to interview him on October 16th of 2020. And it's just a really cool show that we have in our archive. We thought we'd share it in case you didn't come across it, or, it's cool to reminisce about Coach. He has since passed. He was such an instrumental part of Bruce beginning his speaking career. We just thought it would be a really cool episode to share while we take a little break. We will be back next week with a new radio show. So new podcast. So we hope you enjoy this episode with Coach Jack Fullerton.
Hi, thank you for joining us. My name is Bruce Norris, and today our special guest is Jack Fullerton. Jack received the first Rohny Award ever given to recognize his contribution to the real estate investment business and the many lives who have been changed because Jack took the time to teach what he knew and also encouraged them to teach what they knew. Coach Fullerton, former real estate investor club owner in Orange County, and he is a major connector in the real estate investor community. Jack, welcome back to our show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now, where did the coach description come in? What were you doing as a coach, and what age were you doing that in?
Okay, here's where the coach came from. I was a water polo and swimming coach at Orange Coast College, and I literally had gone to Hobie Cat sailing in San Diego in 1980 and got down there on Friday, went to sleep. We got up the next morning and there's no wind. And because of that is how I found John Schaub and Jack Miller, who had flown out to San Diego that day to speak at something where Billy had these free tickets to the Rough Convention, and we went. And when the first speaker got done, he looked out, there's still no wind. He says, I'm in real estate. We go to the real estate. That starts my whole life. I had no interest in real estate at the time. I was really trying to be the most successful water polo and swimming coach I could be. I had studied great coaches. Then what happened? There was a seminar in Vegas sometime, I'd say I started in 80. So I'd say sometime between 81 and 83. And it just on a roll of the dice, John Schaub and I are sitting at the 21 table next to each other. We don't know each other hardly at all at the time. He knew I was one of the students. That was about it. And what happened is that I kept winning at 21, and he kept not doing as well. But then after we got done, I did well. He didn't do as well. He said, we won the same hands. How did you do it? And I told him how I'd learned to bet at 21, not how I played it. And he came back into the class the next day, and he started calling me out coach, and he told everybody how we have to invest in real estate from now on, from what we did at the 21 table. He says, you buy one house, handle it, learn how to use it for about 6 months, buy 2 more houses, learn how to handle it. After that, then in the next 6 months, you buy 3. But if one goes bad, you go back on the next 6 months and buy 1. And that was basically all I was doing. And from that point on, he kept calling me coach. And it just stuck because I had been a swimming and water polo coach. So that's how that.
I got a question. Was John Schaub there as a teacher at the time, or was he a student?
No, I was there for a Jack and John class. And he starts off about telling everybody how I won at 21 and he didn't. And what I was doing and how I was betting, and he said that's how we should be investing in real estate. It was fascinating.
So you were kind of getting your feet wet in real estate when you got introduced to Jim Rohn.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, because I was in the same room you were that day. We figured that out, 35 years later? And
Yes.
in the back of the room, and that was in August of 81. And I think that was a blessing. I had the opportunity to go to work for him. So I worked for him for about 5 years. I was there when Tony Robbins was working there. And Tony was incredible. And he was just about 20, and I was 43 and studied all the great coaches. And here I'm learning all this, great stuff. And I'd studied great coaches, but there's so much more to learn. So Jim Rohn had a lot to do with my success, as well as my mentors in real estate.
Would you say that Jim Rohn had as big an impact on your life as anybody?
Yeah. I like to believe that there's more than just one person, but I think he had a great deal to do with my life. I still listen to that 1981 Challenge to Succeed. I probably listened to it at least once within the last month.
Have you ever gone on YouTube? You can watch the 81 talk live.
I didn't realize that. I will have to do that. I actually have it on the VCR. Back when I worked for him, I bought that silly thing and I was using it as training, but I haven't watched it in ages. I listened to it because, I also have the script. And what's really fascinating, when I watch it, I know exactly when he's going to turn to the left and touch his right side of his nose. Turned out that he did it so many times, it was like a play. And he had it recorded every time he did it. And they gave it to him in triple space. And he'd go back and he'd restructure how he says some of the words. The guy was an amazing man. He really was. I am so blessed to know him. The last time I actually saw him was at your seminar, and I got to have lunch with him that day, which was fascinating.
That was a great experience. Somebody in the audience actually was sitting next to me. He says, I wonder why he's still speaking. Like there was, what's up? And during the 1 hour talk, he got 3 standing ovations. And I leaned over after the third one. And I said, let me ask you a question. When would you want to give that up? When you have the ability to change people's lives in 3 hours. I get the sense you were a pretty willing participant going to that seminar. I was not. What's amazing about that, he got me in 5 minutes. My first note on the top of my page is this man does not need our money. And that it was important to me because, I had never attended a seminar. And I wanted to feel like there was somebody there that was genuine. And I felt like, and maybe I overread it, and I'm sure he was making money on it. It seemed like there was a bigger purpose for him to doing what he did.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's this interesting thing. I don't know whether I've ever shared this with you, but there was a break halfway through. And I turned to my wife, Mary, and I said, Mary, I'm going to go to work for him. And I did. So I figured that out by the break. So we both had a real light go off that night. It was an incredible night for us. I think it helped both of us a great deal.
Yeah, I actually didn't sleep that night. I went home and I wrote goals for the first time in my life.
You know what saddens me is somewhere in my house is my notes from that night. I really hope they turn up before I pass away because I would like to review them.
That would be fascinating. You know what? I had those notes with me every time I ever went to hear him speak. So I could make new notes on top of notes. And if he ever missed a story, man, I knew it. Well, wait a minute. Where's the story that I wanted to hear,
Well, here's an interesting thing. Because I had a copy of what the talk was that we had because we worked for him. I actually, we went to that meeting every month. We had 1,000 people we put in at the park. And the next night, Tony Robbins put about 475 in the Bonaventure, and we put 25. And every time I go, I'd take a different color pen. So when I pull that thing out right now, it's fascinating. I have different things that he says underlined in 4 or 5 different colors, which means it hit me. Sometimes I've got something that's just one color, which means I got it one time. But other times something hits me really hard. I underlined it again in a different color, a different color, a different color. And it's fascinating every time. In fact, I think when we get done, I'll go over and grab the book and go look at it again. I tend to look at it every now and then. It's really fun.
The method that you ended up finding most of your properties was literally going into a neighborhood and just knocking on doors. Who taught you that method?
Well, if you followed up on what Jack Miller did, Jack's program, and he'd tell us about it, and many people don't follow up on it, but it was really a good program. And he had to survive. He got fired from I think it was Honeywell, and he picked up a license, and he's going to work for this guy, and he figured out that what he had to do is he had to go out and buy some houses to put bread on the table for his family. He had 2 kids and his wife. And what he did is he'd buy 1,000 calling cards. And the way I understand it is the way he would tell us, every day he'd get up early and he'd go out on the street and he had to put 33 cards in somebody's hand. And he wouldn't come home until he got rid of those 33 on that day, which is, so he's getting rid of 1,000 cards a month.
Right.
And then he would, make offers, and he was trying to be a salesman, but he'd also would give them $100 for an option on their property and then try and sell it. He figured out he could make more money doing that. And then the other thing that was interesting, his son told me like maybe 10 or 15 years ago, that one of the things was back in the old days, we didn't have walk around phones, and he would come home and say he'd get home at 7 that night. He would immediately go grab that phone and start making phone calls. And he'd walk all over the house. They had the longest cord they could get for that phone. He'd walk all over the house and be making phone calls because he had to make money to put money on the table for his family. Mm-hmm. And I learned from that. And then, I realized here's something I really think I should share with you. And I've been thinking about a lot of things about what I did to get where I am. And what's really interesting is I bought the first house. I had no down payment. And my teaching assistant had come to me and said, I got $18,000 in a divorce. She knew I was studying the real estate. And she had let 8 out and hadn't got anything back. And she said, I got $10,000, and my ex-husband, who was an art dealer, is now a mortgage guy. He says he'll put it out and put it to work for him. And I said, do you trust him? And she says, no. And I fortunately I told her, well, you should go buy a house. And she didn't want to buy the house. So in my way I tend to do things, I said, okay, I'll give you 2% more than your husband, who you don't trust, offers you. And he offered 18, and I had to pay 20, which is $167 a month. I could not get her to buy the house. I went and bought my first rental house. After that, I bought the wrong house. I had gotten a license, and during the summer, to make a little extra money, I was trying to be a realtor. I'd taken 3 people out. We found 3 properties, and I opened my mouth again. I said, I'm going to buy whichever one you guys don't buy. Well, they made offers on 2 houses, which today are the better houses of the 3. And I bought the 3rd one, and it looked really good. But in those days, it was buyer beware. And the people had a broken foundation. They had covered everything up. And I bought the house. And the other thing is the 2 people I was going to make a commission on all backed out because the interest rate went from 11 to 14 in about 4 weeks. And I closed at 14. And had bought it on an 80-10-10. I used the $10,000 for the down payment. I got the seller to carry 10, and I got 80% loan. And then Robert Allen came around, and he was saying, well, once you put your money out, get it back as fast as you can. That's the same thing we were doing in regards to the betting on 21. So we put our money out, and if we won, we pulled it out. And so I refinanced, and I got about 12,000 out of a 14,000 refinance because it went up a little bit, and I'm paying 18% for that money because that's interest rates were high then. And I took that money and bought the next 3. Well, after I had bought 2 of them and I'm about to buy the third one, my wife leaves for greener pastures. So when all the smoke clears, I've got 4 houses and don't know what I'm doing. And there's a guy out on the YouTube who says you should buy 4 houses. And the more I thought about that, I went back and looked at my own life, and that's what happened. If my wife had left me, my goal was to have 100 houses. I was trying to buy 1 a month at the time when she leaves. And it made me stop. And for the next 2 years, I studied and got better. And then the next Easter vacation, because I'm working 60 to 80 hours a week as a water polo swimming coach. So Easter vacation, I'm kind of off for part of the week. And on that Monday, I bought 3 houses. Well, actually, I bought a condo and 2 houses. And the condo I bought with a $100 bill, took subject to all the financing. The 2 houses I'm going to flip. And I had a friend who I was helping out, and she was a very successful lady, and she was going to buy REOs. I said, can I go with you? We went with her to that. When she got done buying the 4plexes that she was buying, I said, you got any houses? And they offered me 2 houses. So I took the money I had, a little money, and from a line of credit, and I bought 2 rental houses for about $80,000. I'm going to sell them for about 100, 105. Well, I'm a failed flipper. I never got them. Flipped. I'm sitting there, and the best one I still have. This is 1983, and I still have it. And what's fascinating, I'm writing an $800 check every month to pay for this house. And I finally said, you know what? If I rented it for $595, it would take me 4 months to lose $800. Which today that property nets me easily $2,000 a month. So I look back at. Along the way, I bought a lot of, I didn't buy nearly what you or others have, but I bought more. And along the way, I'd sell one and I'd pay down debt on others so I could keep what I had. And what's fascinating when I look back at it, if I had flipped that property, I might have made $5,000 to $7,000.
Right.
Well, look at what it's doing today. And I look back at the houses that I got rid of. I got rid of houses that are worth $1 million today. And yeah, granted, if I had to do it again, I probably did the right thing, because the purchases, when I sold them, that money went to pay down debt on other houses.
You definitely had a big impact on me eventually waking up to the fact that I had to own something and pay it off. And that would make my life completely sane. In 2005, when obviously we kind of worried about the California market, but we had a housing tract that we sold, 90 houses we built, and it did really well. And I just decided to pay everything off. And the only day of the year I did not like that was April 15th, but every other day I liked it a lot. And I've liked it ever since. So that's it's just been one of those things that you're just very thankful that you don't have to worry about. And it wasn't in my vocabulary seriously until you talked to me one day pretty seriously about what happens to Marcia if you can't go find another house. And yeah, it actually stuck home one day, and I realized, I better do some of that. But some of we have gone down different paths. I was looking at my son Greg took over the flipping business probably for about 9 years. So 2007 to 2016, maybe 2017. I literally did not see the last 900 houses I flipped.
Wow.
And you literally have almost have every house you've ever seen. It's just a very different world.
Oh yeah, because my goal of 100 houses I never made. And
well, you didn't need to.
I didn't make 100. I probably been lucky if I got 70. But I live at a very higher age. I mean, today, if I were buying one of my rental houses, well, the last one I bought was 2 years ago. It was 900,000, and that's a rental house.
Yeah.
And when I started, those same houses were 100. Now, I'd say my average rental house is somewhere between 7 and 8 right now, maybe 850. And the saddest part of it is, if somebody were starting today and they wanted to buy an $800,000 house and they needed to have 10% down, they need to have figured out how to keep 80,000.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do.
It is hard to do.
Yeah. So I really encourage people, if you can do anything, go buy a condo at 500 or 600. Then you only need 50 to 60,000. And if you can get one of the things I do is I go back, Bruce, and look at what I've done. Before I started in the real estate business, I had bought 1, 2, 3 houses. Yeah. And I bought the first one in a $25,000 market, which is within 2 miles of where I live today.
Right.
So that's what's changed. But what's interesting is the only way I could buy that house that day is somebody said, well, just offer them 19. So we bought that $25,000 house for 20. Now, I don't know what I'm doing that day.
Right.
The $2,000 down I needed, I got from my mother and paid her back. So then the next thing that happens is I end up buying my next house by selling that house for $30,000 on an 80-10-10. So I learned the 80-10-10 program. And I took my money from that and bought the house that the mother of my children lives in, 3 houses away from me. And we bought that for $49,000. But we took the money out of the house that we sold and put that into the new house. It was $49,000. And then I had a divorce with the mother of my children. And when I remarried, I bought a $42,000 house on a fluke and still didn't know what I was doing. And I said to Martha Bainan at the time, she'd shown me about 30 houses, and we knew we could afford 35. And I said, she shows us this last one, which is a little bit of a fixer, had a big tear down the carpet, needed to be painted, all kinds of things. And I'd remarried, had no money. And I told Martha, you need to make offer for $35,000 for me. She said, yeah, but somebody in the office turned down $39,000 yesterday. I said, Martha, if I make the offer, you got to take it in. She takes it in. She calls me the next day and said, you got it. You know what the situation was? It was a divorcee's house who had remarried, and her new husband said, I don't care what the next offer is, you take it.
Wow.
So that's how we got that. Now, once again, I need $3,500 down, right? Because I don't have it. Because I don't have a house to sell, because I've been divorced and my wife had the house she lives in today. And my mom loaned me the money again. So there's my 10%. Now, that house, we were so poor, somebody loaned us a refrigerator that we put in the garage that had coils on the top. We couldn't afford a bed. Somebody loaned us a waterbed bag. We put it in the corner of the living room and we slept on that. And then what we did is we spent the next week or two painting the house ourselves. Never replaced the carpet in the living room that had a 12-foot tear down the carpet. And then when I had the divorce with Carol, we end up, when Mary moves in, Mary and I are 36 years together, never had new carpet under her feet because we put the carpet into the rental houses. And I go back to something I think is the most important thing that anybody could ever learn is my good friend Jimmy Napier, who has unfortunately passed away. Jimmy once came into town and he said to everybody in this room has a 5-year sacrifice period. You could sacrifice 5 years when you're old and sick and broke, or you could sacrifice 5 years when you're young and viable. Now I'm 43 about that time. And Mary and I bought that program. So for 5 years, Mary and I watched every single nickel we spent. Every Tuesday, we went to Bob's Big Boy for the 2-for-1 combo. That was our date night. And look at that, and I look back, and now I'm in a position where I can't do what I used to be able to do. And I get my 75 to 85-year-old friends call me and say, what do I do now? I have no money. Many of those people were 10 times better at it than I was, but they flipped and sold everything and spent the money. Now, Mary and I just waited a while. And at 5 years, we thought maybe we'd made a mistake. But at 8 to 10 years, I had retired from the college. And because of that, we've been all over the world. We had a great life. And the fact that we let it, and here's something else with the Commonwealth. I'll never forget, we've got a great person, Ray Reese. He was come to our meetings. You know, it's really interesting. Successful people used to come. They just came because they wanted to learn something extra, or they wanted to remember things they might have forgotten. And we had Ray speak, and he had a 5-year sacrifice period. We had Mick Blackwell speak. It was like pulling teeth to get Mick to speak. I said, Mick, I'll interview you. We'll sit on some bar stools in front of you. So he comes up there. Within about 7 minutes, I knew he didn't need me anymore. And that's the first time he ever spoke. And I moved away, and along the way he said, yeah, we sacrificed for 5 years. We had 5 meals we used to have. Oh, this didn't work. Hang on, I gotta answer it and hang up. Okay, and what happened is he's talking about spaghetti and different things, and he couldn't remember the last one. And Marge out in the audience says, pork and beans, and the place. Look at Mick, he's out teaching people every day. Mick is a wonderful, wonderful man. He does a lot to help everybody. And it's really interesting, but we had a bunch of other different people. One guy just passed away, and his net worth was really big. And I will never forget when he got up and talked, he's talked without everybody defining it, 5-year sacrifice period. And I think that's one of the big secrets. Is you've got to cut back on the dollars that come through your fingers and don't spend them. And I remember reading a book called Think Like a Tycoon by Bill Green. In Think and Grow Rich, no, not Think and Grow Rich, The Richest Man in Babylon tells you to put 10% away to invest. Well, in Bill Green's book, he says put more than 10%. And so those two books were really valuable to me. The Richest Man in Babylon got me out of debt because when I started in this trip, I was $35,000 in debt, making $30,000 a year, which means you've already spent next year's income.
Right.
And able to get out of debt by listening to the parables in the Richest Man in Babylon. So I talked too much.
No. One of my favorite Jim Rohn quotes: "Do what you have to for as long as you need to, so you can do what you want to for as long as you can."
So true.
Yep.
You know,
go ahead.
I was just going to share something else from Jim. Let me see if I can get this right. He always said standard education gets standard results and self-education gets incredible results.
Yep.
But the one I'm trying to remember is, his decision of the difference between financially free and those who are not. And I send out a little cover letter whenever I give away one of my free newsletters, which I stopped writing in '91. You can't buy them. And what it says is that financially free people save their money first and spend after they've saved. The rest of the population, about 95% of what they do is they spend their money first when they get their paycheck. If they have anything left, they save it. And they do exactly what I did in my first, 20 or so adult times. We were saving money all the time. But if I got $500, gosh darn, I had to go buy a new TV to restart. And that's one of the biggest traps that none of us have. We want it today instead of waiting. And I think, thank God, Mary came into my life because she was willing to wait with me. And that's really important. Your partner has got to be with you. And it turned out my second wife was a wonderful lady. I think the world of her today, but she wasn't on the same page. And she wanted to play now and ran off with a Playboy. So fascinating how life is.
It is. We don't have a lot more time, but what I'd like to do is I just want to go down a list of people's names who I know have impacted your life and that you've either co-taught with or been taught by. And I want the first word that kind of comes to your mind when I say their name, like the category that you remember them for. So, and I'm gonna say Ward Hannigan, but I'm gonna prep it before I talked to him earlier today, and you invited him to speak before he knew he was going to enjoy it. And he said when he got done, your whole group gave him a standing ovation. And ever since that day, he has loved being in front of an audience. So you had a really big impact on Ward Hannigan.
I think he had a big impact on me.
So what's the word that comes to mind with Ward?
Probably changed my life a lot. I'd like to share with you what happened. We went to a guy named Charlie Dorsey. He spoke 3 times. And he got halfway through the morning and he said, everybody in this room should be saving $1,000 a month. Well, at that point, I'm doing that $35,000 in debt program. And I'm ready to leave. And Ward talked me into going to lunch with him. So we go into the lunchroom. We've got our name tags on. There's a big table where Charlie was. And I'm a water polo coach. I don't know anything. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. And so we get invited to sit at the opposite end from Charlie Dorsey at his big table. And so I sit there and I don't say a word. And one thing happens is that it turns out that everybody stops talking. So I said, Mr. Dorsey, you don't understand my life. I'm spending 110% of what I made. And I had never heard this before, but it was a blessing. And I'm sure it's, a lot of people teach it. And he said, young man, write down everything you spend for the next 30 days, of which I did. And I used to go to breakfast at Charlie's Chili before. I'd spend $6.35. I wrote that down. I then decided, well, gosh, instead of going at 5 o'clock in the morning, what if I go at 8 o'clock on the captain's table on campus, which has no real estate cost in the food, and the students are in a classroom, so there's no cost for the people. And so I got the same breakfast for $3.35. I wrote that down. The next week, I went to the galley and stood up, got the same food, $1.35. I just saved $5 per day by writing down everything I spent. And I did that on a lot of other things, but that's $100 a month right there. And, I didn't learn any of that. They didn't teach me that in high school. Nobody taught me that. I had to wait until I was 43 to learn that.
All right. John Schaub, what comes to mind?
Probably my first teacher.
Okay.
First guy that I really believed in. When I took that class called Making It Big on Little Deals, which is my philosophy. And John is probably one of the most honorable guys. He probably is the most honorable, or one of the most that I've ever known. He is always a giver. When they found out that Mary was sick, he was on the phone from a seminar immediately. When I lost Mary, he called me all the time. When I went through my divorce, we had gotten to know each other a little bit. We had taken a class from Warren Harding called Personal Magnetism and Leadership Training. And it was a week later that I lost my wife, and he called and checked on me. He's just become a great friend. And yet I've learned a lot from him. And I used to do we used to take it from his class. We'd take a group of 7 people. Here's something really valuable. We used to take a group out on the street on Friday night at his seminar when he would do Making It Big on Little Deals here in Costa Mesa. We took people into my farm, and we put 7 groups into a street with 28 to 32 houses. Let's just say 30 houses. So now we've got 30 houses, 7 groups, of 210 houses. Half the people aren't home, 105 houses, and they knock on the doors and talk to people. They come back in the next day, and you know what? They found about 8 deals. Now, if a person said, gosh, 210 houses were knocked on, they only talked to 105 of them, and they did that an hour and a half one night. What if you went and spent an hour and a half every Saturday and did it 7 weeks in a row? You'd probably find something. But most people won't go out there. They get the no's, no, and they quit. And so I think people give up too quick.
I had an interesting experience with a mailer. I decided I would just write offers instead of write I buy houses. So I did an experiment, and I wrote 100 offers into an area in Moreno Valley. At the time, the house was worth about 75, 80,000. I literally I drove all the houses. I looked at the repairs and kind of gave an estimate. So I did a mailer. I got a really nasty phone call, and how dare you, whatever. And I had a pleasant attitude, and I said, I really appreciate you calling. And why would you say that? I said, well, what happens is whenever I get a really nasty response, I naturally get a yes answer on the next call. So I really appreciate making way for that next call.
Yeah. So did you get the yes on the next call?
I got 4 yeses on that mailer.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yep. And here's a true story about one of the purchases. The guy owned the house that he was living in next. It was across the street from the rental. It was exactly the same house in a tract. As we were signing the agreement for 35 grand, he said, you couldn't buy my residence for less than 80 grand.
Wow.
But he was selling me his house for 35. That was exactly the same house across the street, because it didn't have the same meaning to him.
That is a fascinating point.
It really was. Same house, half price, had no connection, because he didn't plant the roses and he didn't do that stuff. That was just sort of like, oh, the last tenant was a pain in the butt, and that's what his memory was.
I had a good friend named Karen Kaizuka, who, when she passed away, she had 40 houses. And I don't think Karen ever bought a house that she paid less than 98% of the value. And yet she'd buy them, and she'd keep them, and she'd manage them, and then she just kept them. Now, 40 houses sounds like a lot. She really had 10 to 12 in Cyprus, and the rest were in Oklahoma, so they were really cheaper houses. But still, at that's what she did. And I think some people say, well, I can't buy anything if I can't get it for 60 cents on the dollar. Well, I'm going to say I bought things too high, and I bought things where I've gotten good deals. But it's crazy if you think you got to have everything be 60 cents on the dollar.
You're right. You remember a gentleman named Schumacher?
Oh, David, yes.
Yeah. So David taught me a good lesson, and he was very kind to me. When I started speaking, he literally showed up one time 3 days in a week. He drove, at the time he could see, he was in San Diego to hear me, Orange County to hear me at your club, in LA, three times in a week. And I think he was sort of fascinated at some of the stuff that I was able to do. So he invited me to lunch. Now, it turned out differently than I thought, because I'm sitting in front of I'm on the beach in one of his houses. And he was talking about being fascinated that I was able to buy stuff at a discount. And I was pretty enthralled with that, And then he said this. He said, buying at discount is good. But he said, I bought this house for 60 grand. And by the way, how he did that is he rented a helicopter crew, and he flew all over the place looking for like blank patches of activity on the coast. And he bought where he knew it would fill in. Now he's a little bit over out of my league when he thinks like that. So he buys this house for, I'll just say it's 60 or 80 grand. And then he overpays for the next one, literally a month later next door for 120, overpays for 100 at 120 because it was on terms. And then he said, in a little bit of pause, he says, but he says, now they're both worth 3 million. So I guess it didn't really matter.
Well, you know that he gave $1 million, I think it's to Hermosa Beach, to redo their pier.
Wow.
And I think that's, if I've got the right town, that's where they have the big volleyball tournaments. And you know what he did? Were you in his house where he goes upstairs?
Yeah.
And the elevator was outside?
Yeah.
He had an elevator later. And when I went there, he was, legally blind. But at one time, there was one volleyball court in front of his house, and they'd come over and use his spigot. He goes to the city and says, look, I want to put a drinking fountain on the other side. And so he paid to put it underneath the strand there, and they had a drinking fountain on the other side. I don't know what this could be. I don't know what it is, but I think there's like 20 or 30 volleyball courts there now. And they hold big volleyball tournaments right in front of his house, all because he took the initiative to help the volleyball players. Well, when he could see, he saw all these girls running around in these cute bikinis. It was fun. He would come to the Commonwealth all the time. He would sit there and somebody say that none of us got what was said, and you'd hear this chuckle out of David. He was so far advanced to the rest of us. It was crazy, but he helped everybody.
He did. He was very, very kind man and very patient with a young upstart that thought he was doing great things. And then he kind of taught me location's pretty important. If you can get one, even if you overpay, maybe that's a good idea. Well, Jack, we're out of time. I want to thank you for all you've contributed to my life and to our industry. You've mattered to an awful lot of people, and I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Bruce. And I appreciate that we've become such great friends. And I remember I wouldn't let you speak for a long time. And I'm glad, that it's just been great. And I appreciate you and everything you do for everybody. People just don't understand how much value you're giving back to the beginners and the pros. I mean, we all listen to whatever you say. So thank you very much.
Okay. All right, Jack. Well, you have a wonderful night. Okay.
You too. Thank you so much.
For more information on hard money loans, trust deed investing, and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For more information on passive investing through the DBL Capital Real Estate Investment Fund, please visit dblcapital.com.
The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under the California DRE license 01219911, Florida Mortgage Lender license 1577, and NMLS license 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the hard money tab.